Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As always, before we dive into the movie recap, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on other exciting videos from our channel. The movie begins with a deer hunt carried out by Odin and Suha in the Sudbury Forest, located in eastern Canada. However, their activity is abruptly interrupted when Ray, a former hunter wearing a gang jacket, orders them to leave. Ray reminds them that the forest is a protected area. Hearing this, Odin and Suha, feeling intimidated, immediately comply. However, when Ray's car battery suddenly dies as he's about to leave, he asks them to jumpstart it. Frustrated, Odin responds with a mocking remark and drives off without helping. Back at his cabin, Ray, who lives alone, keeps an eye on the CCTV cameras he's set up across the protected forest. The scene then shifts to a beautiful sheriff named Elise, who has just brought in her younger brother, Brooke, who looks battered, as if he had just been beaten up by a martial arts student. Brooke admits that Sam attacked him for flirting with his crush. Hearing this, Elise, finding the situation ridiculous, advises Brooke not to overreact about romantic matters. She suggests he focus on his future so he can become a sheriff like her someday. Shortly after, Ellis receives a report from her team about the discovery of an unidentified woman's body floating in the river. Back to Ray. Besides serving as a forest protector, Ray also runs nature study tours for elementary school children, eager to learn about the outdoors. Before taking them on a tour, Ray shows them a map of the protected forest he oversees. He also warns them to stay cautious, as many traps set by illegal hunters still remain in the area. Meanwhile, at the crime scene, Elise and her team are puzzled by strange wounds on the victim's throat. When they discover an arrow embedded in a tree trunk, Elise instructs her team to collect it as evidence. On the other side, after jump-starting his car battery, Ray heads into town to distribute missing person flyers he printed. It turns out that Ray has a daughter who mysteriously disappeared. Long story short, upon returning from town, Ray is shocked to find his ex-wife, Debbie, waiting at his cabin with a man named Carlos, who looks like a truck driver. Sensing something is off, Ray immediately invites them into the cabin. Debbie then reveals the reason for her visit. She asks Ray to let go of their daughter Gwen, who has been missing for 5 years. Debbie wants Ray to sign Gwen's death certificate and hold a symbolic funeral. However, Ray refuses. He believes Gwen is still alive, even though her body is. Meanwhile, at the police station, Ellis is puzzled when she finds the initials MB engraved on the arrow she discovered. In the middle of the night, Ray, drunk and panicked, watches the news about the discovery of an unidentified woman's body floating in the river. Fearing it might be his daughter, he immediately rushes to the hospital to check. Upon arriving at the morgue, Ray feels relieved to discover that the body is not Gwen. He quickly heads back home. A while later, Ellis, curious about Ray, asks Dr. Bone what really happened to him. Bone reveals that the incident of Gwen's disappearance 5 years ago caused Ray, who has a tendency to drink, to fall into deep regret. To this day, Ray, feeling like a failure as a father, continues to search for Gwen, who vanished without a trace. The next day, Ray is puzzled when he hears his dog barking at the CCTV monitor. Seeing a figure resembling Bigfoot carrying an arrow, Ray quickly rushes out to make an arrest. Upon reaching the forest, Ray calls out, urging the figure to come forward, explaining that the forest is a protected area. Oh my god. It turns out the figure wasn't Bigfoot, but a hunter wearing a ghillie suit. While chasing the figure, Ray discovers a car without a license plate. He marks the car, convinced that it belongs to the hunter. Back at the cabin, Ray, who doesn't have insurance, tries to treat the arrow wound on his chest. Afterward, he checks the surveillance cameras to track the whereabouts of the hunter.
What were you tracking?
Ray panics when he sees a girl being targeted by the hunter on the surveillance footage. With his preparations in place, Ray heads back into the forest to find the girl. However, unbeknownst to him, the hunter is camouflaged nearby. Despite Ray's efforts, the hunter manages to escape. Meanwhile, Illis visits a hunting gear store called Marksman. She shows the arrow fragment she found to the store owner, Jim. After examining it, Jim realizes that the arrow was launched using a tool called an otlot, a weapon used by the Mayans for hunting. Jim explains that in skilled hands, an otlot can propel an arrow with the speed of a sniper bullet. By chance, Ray finds the girl unconscious, but notices strange slashes on her throat. As night falls, he decides to take her to a safe place for shelter. When the girl wakes up and appears panicked, Ray tries to calm her down and convinces her to enter a trap pit with him to avoid freezing to death. Although hesitant, the girl eventually decides to trust Ray. After realizing that Ray is a good person, the girl, who has lost her voice, writes her name on a piece of paper, Molly. Ray then advises Molly to rest so they can continue their journey the next day. Meanwhile, Carlos informs Ellis that the police recently received a report about a missing girl. Showing her a photo of Molly, Carlos explains that some residents reported seeing Molly with Brooke. However, Ellis dismisses the idea, firmly believing her brother couldn't be involved in a kidnapping, despite his reputation for being hopelessly lucky. The next day, Ray is seen carrying Molly toward his cabin. During a break, he shares the story of his daughter Gwen's disappearance 5 years ago, a tragedy that plunged him into deep sorrow. This time, Ray vows not to let Molly's parents suffer the same fate he did. Ray shows Molly a flyer of Gwen, hoping she might recognize her. However, Molly shakes her head, indicating she doesn't know anything. In the afternoon, while on patrol, Illis is instructed to visit Ray's cabin to retrieve the rifles belonging to Odin and Suha, which Ray had previously confiscated. As dusk falls, Ray and Molly finally arrive at the cabin. However, Ray becomes puzzled when he can't find his dog. They are startled when 2 gunshots ring out around the cabin. Frightened, Molly sees the hunter approaching. Unfortunately, Molly suddenly collapses after feeling a sharp pain in her stomach. Moments later, the hunter panics as he sees Ellis's car approaching.
Rayburn, have a moment to talk? Put your gun down!
Ray tries to explain that the true culprit is behind Ellie.
I said put your gun down!
On you!
Drop your weapon!
However, when
Brooks.
Ellis sees the hunter signaling, she mistakenly believes that Ray is the one responsible for her brother's murder. In a desperate move, she shoots at Ray, while the hunter escapes. A few moments later, Ilias panics when she realizes that Ray managed to escape the attack. As Ellis continues her search for Ray, she unexpectedly falls into a bear trap, resulting in serious injuries. At the same time, Ray quickly contacts for help to evacuate Ellis and the injured Molly. When the rescue team arrives, Ellis takes advantage of the situation by playing the victim and orders her team to arrest Ray. The next morning, Ray, wounded, goes to Debbie and Carlos for help. While holding back the pain, Ray reveals that he was shot by Elise while trying to capture Brooke, a girl hunter. Realizing that he's now a fugitive, Ray asks Carlos to hide him for a while. Carlos then takes the wounded Ray to Dr. Bone for treatment. In a critical condition, Ray rambles on, expressing his longing for his daughter. When seeing Ray's life hanging by a thread, Dr. Bone immediately performs emergency surgery to save him. A while later, Carlos locates Brooke and quickly calls his team to set up an ambush.
Hey. Brooks! Hey! Get back, I'll fucking kill him.
Okay, stay calm.
This isn't just my fault, okay?
As the police team surrounds the area, a panicked Brooke takes Dr. Bone hostage. However, despite his injuries, Ray manages to intervene, allowing Brooke to be captured. Meanwhile, Elise, still receiving treatment, suddenly panics upon hearing the news of her brother's capture. She immediately asks Carlos to free Brooke. However, Carlos reassures Elise by saying that after the interrogation, it was revealed that Brooke was not the hunter they were looking for. Brooke was only found guilty of drug use and beating up a rival in a love rivalry. Carlos also adds that Elise is lucky because Ray chose not to report her shooting incident. The next day, Ray thanks Dr. Bone for saving his life. However, his relief quickly turns to sorrow when Debbie informs him that Brooke was not the hunter who attacked him. Back at the cabin, Ray begins to try and turn his life around. He starts cleaning up the empty drink bottles scattered around. However, he is deeply moved when he finds the last bottle he bought before Gwen disappeared. Ray recalls how Gwen was disgusted by his bad habit of drinking. The memory haunts him, as after buying the drink, Gwen suddenly vanished and has never been found since. The next day, Ray, standing at an intersection, becomes suspicious of a car that resembles the hunter's. He quickly decides to follow it. When Ray arrives at the location, he recognizes the car he had previously marked with an X. However, the only person who gets out of the car is an old man. When asked, the man explains that the car is frequently borrowed by his neighbor, who lives on the hill. Hearing this, Ray immediately decides to check it out. Upon arriving, Ray is shocked to find a girl whose vocal cords have been removed. To his surprise, the hunter in the ghillie suit is revealed to be Dr. Bone. But why would Dr. Bone do all of this? Meanwhile, at the hospital, Elis continues her investigation with Dr. Bone's assistant to retrieve the autopsy results of the kidnapping victim. As Mary searches for the file, Elis notices a photo of Bone displayed on the wall. She becomes curious about the beautiful young woman in the photo. Mary explains that the woman is Dr. Bone's daughter, Melissa, who tragically died 6 years ago in a drunk driving accident. Elis then realizes something when she notices the pendant with the initials MB that Melissa was wearing. She finally uncovers the truth, revealing that Dr. Bone is the hunter they have been searching for all along. In short, Elis and her team immediately conduct a raid at Dr. Bone's house.
Call the paramedics.
Jesus Christ.
Upon reaching the basement, Elis orders her team to evacuate the victims immediately. Meanwhile, Dr. Bone takes Ray into the forest with the intention of letting him go, only to hunt him down using a traditional Maya weapon. After releasing Ray, Dr. Bone quickly puts on his signature ghillie suit and prepares to begin the hunt. Meanwhile, Elis heads to Ray's cabin to inform him of the hunter's true identity. However, she is shocked when she watches the forest CCTV footage, which shows Ray being hunted by someone. Realizing the presence of the CCTV, Ray seizes the opportunity to search for the traps he had set earlier. When there is an opening, Ray throws a sound diversion device to distract Dr. Bone. After successfully beating him senseless, Ray demands answers from Bone about why he killed Gwen and the other girls. With broken teeth and barely able to speak, Dr. Bone reveals that he saw Gwen as a burden to society, believing she would grow up just like Ray, a drunkard. Furthermore, Dr. Bone, consumed by madness, wanted everyone to experience the pain of losing a child, just as he did when his own daughter, Melissa, was killed by a drunk driver. Hearing this confession, Ray, disgusted and enraged, drags Dr. Bone toward a nearby trap. The tension escalates when, suddenly, Elis, the hypocritical sheriff, arrives and tries to stop Ray from taking matters into his own hands. However, Ray coldly responds, "You can shoot me again, but I'll still finish off this crazy doctor." As Dr. Bone hovers on the brink of death, Ray closes the trap door, letting him suffer before the inevitable end. As he walks away, Ray turns to Elis and says, "Your debt to me is paid now." The next day, Ray, who begins to accept the reality of Gwen's loss, removes all the missing person flyers he had posted. A few days later, despite Gwen's body never being found, Ray, Debbie, and their extended family hold a funeral ceremony for Gwen, who passed away at the age of 14, seeking peace in the grace of God. That's all for the recap of The Silencing 2023. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on more interesting videos. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.